Hello, 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 and welcome to another episode of the Blue Oval Podcast. I am Ben Weissel, and joining me, as always, Garrett Zetlin. How's it going, man?
Ben, let me take you through my Sunday, okay? Woke up excited for football, right? Went out, got my coffee, and I was like, you know what? While I'm working, I should get a Chromecast from the Target across the street and I'll stream the games, right? As I'm working on my TV. It'll be perfect. So then I get the Chromecast, except then it takes me 4 hours to try to set this thing up. Still doesn't work. And I'm just hitting my head against the table. The Steelers get demolished in the worst loss of the Mike Tomlin era. And then I realized that I can mirror on my laptop directly to my TV anyways. And it was just the biggest middle finger to myself. It was a tough Sunday. I don't know if your Sunday got any better. I guess it did because of the Eagles one, but that was my day.
Yeah, but they also gave me like a minor heart attack. And I was betting a good amount on the games, and I about broke even, but also had a lot of heart attacks during that. So I completely understand where you're coming from. Tough loss for the Steelers. Nothing, nowhere to go but up
No.
at this point. And hey, you figured out some technology, which, as we've proved throughout the course of this podcast, we could use some improved knowledge of technology.
Yeah, the bar's so low here. Like you and I, it's we you just hook it up. It should work. It should just work instantly, and apparently it doesn't. So aside from that, we got some great ratings and reviews, right? We got a handful.
We got 3 new ratings on Spotify. We're up to 120. I didn't see any new ones on Apple, but those could be coming in. We did get. Where did we get this review that you sent over to me? Was
It
this
was
via
YouTube.
email?
No,
YouTube?
YouTube.
Okay. Oh, wow. All right. So we got a nice long comment on YouTube. Basically, one of the questions they posed, I think, was best top four that we've ever seen on the women's side. We mentioned NC State having really good top four, top five coming into this year, and they brought up the 2017 New Mexico team that had Kurgat, Kaladi, Prouse, and Wright, and then also the Colorado women's team of 2018 that had Danny Jones, McKenna Morley, Tabor Scholl, and Sage Herda. How do you think they stack up compared to these two squads?
I'm trying to think about it because I've been going back and looking, and I feel like the Danny Jones Colorado team, because I know they had like something like six All Americans, right?
Yeah,
But I don't think they were as like potent. Yeah, because you had Colorado that year.
it was
Jones,
very surprising
it
result.
was.
I think I was there for that. I was in Wisconsin watching that, and that was one of the more stunning things, being near the finish line and just seeing Buffalo after Buffalo after Buffalo across the line.
So they went like 1-8-14-22 or something like that, or one
Yeah, it
eight
was
fifteen
ridiculous.
twenty two. So which is great, but that's not. I don't think that's as potent as what Alabama did last year with their top four. I think NC State could have a more potent top four this year. New Mexico's 2017 squad is probably the one that they would have to rival, where they
Yeah.
went 1-7-12 and 14 in the overall results. But
And
I
that
don't think
wasn't
that's
surprising
unrealistic.
either. Like that
No,
was like you kind of expected that from that New Mexico team. Like you honestly could have expected 4 in the top 10 that year. They were that good. I don't know if we quite think that NC State's going to be quite that good, but they certainly have the potential to be.
I don't know. I think they. I mean, you kind of look at the numbers and look at like who's there. I mean, I think a lot of it will come down to is Bush like a top 15 runner in the
Yeah.
country, but and also like to be clear, I think we're just talking about recent history. I don't think our
Right.
knowledge is good to know every single year of what all of those top fours looked like. So I'm sure we're probably missing something beyond like 2016, 2015. But outside of that, interesting question.
Absolutely. All right. Well, we're gonna have a little bit of an interesting episode today. Not a whole lot going on in the NCAA yet. We've had some kind of, I think, what one of our writers, Finn Burney, called compliance meets so far, where some 5Ks being run just to kind of get everybody back in the swing of things, but nothing major yet. We're through all our preseason rankings on the D1 side, at least. So we got some track results to actually discuss, and then we're going to wrap up with Garrett and I giving a hot take on both the men and women's side before we really earnestly begin this cross country season. But let's start with the track results that we've been seeing over the course of this summer that we wanted to touch on. And let's start with Addy Wiley, who has put together over the course of the year a strong case as the top collegiate in the NCAA, regardless of division. She has run 359 in the 1500 meter and 157 in the 800 this summer. She has just been on a roll. I mean, her performances at U.S. championships were outstanding. She looked like she had a great chance of making a U.S. team. It's just been an unbelievable ride for her, and it's just going to be fascinating to see what comes next for her.
Why would she ever return to the NAIA or the collegiate scene in general? Like, even if she went to D1, I mean, sure, maybe Tui's her match, but I mean, Wiley's running the 815. Like, at this point, we don't even know if Tui's going to be here after this cross country season. What? Just go pro. Just go pro.
Yeah, I think that makes sense because I could hear the reasoning of like, it's not broke, don't fix it. And so, like, if you want to stick with the same environment, same coach, just do it and get paid a good amount of money for it. Like you don't have to worry about the NCAA system. Like, you can just run professionally in the same setting. I think that's kind of the only argument I have for going D1 is you're completely changing your training setup, completely changing coaches, like all these things that if you're running so well under a certain set of circumstances, don't mess with that. But going pro doesn't really do anything to that.
Yeah, and I think the elephant in the room that I think we do have to address is the fact that Huntington University, specifically with the allegations going on with Nick Johnson, the former coach there. I wonder if that would impact the ability for her to go pro. Do our brands comfortable, having that association, whether it's fair or not, right? And I do wonder. I'm like, could that play a role? Because at this point, I'm looking at her resume. I'm like, why is she not pro? I think only Athing Mo, has run faster as a collegiate on the all dates, all times list, and that was during the Olympics, right? And then now Wiley on the all dates, all times list is the fastest collegiate ever. So if I'm a brand, most times I'm jumping at that opportunity, and maybe as soon as we publish this podcast, she's signed. That's probably what's going to happen. But it's a really interesting development, just because it's one thing if she's a D1 runner or even a D2 runner, right? NAIA, and frankly, this scenario is really tricky. At least it seems tricky to manage.
Yeah, absolutely interesting situation that she is in, and it'll be she seems to have kind of developed her own standalone reputation just for the performances on like the pro circuit at U.S. championships. So I would think that a brand would feel comfortable, but we'll see. Just a question about her and her running specifically. Do you see her ending up being more 800 or 1500 meter focused in the future?
I think 1500. I think she's aerobically strong enough and speedy enough in the over the 800 to kind of have that be her middle ground. She's already had major success, fifth at USA's this past summer, 359. I mean, when you're past Jenny Simpson on an all time list like that, I think that's I don't know. I just think it's her perfect sweet spot. And again 359. Like, it's such a good time. It's I think
157 is incredible too, though. I mean, like,
but I think 359 is noticeably better than 157.
so
I'll go
what's the equivalent of a 359 for an 800? Is it
I'll like 156.5.
okay? So
No, is that true? Maybe that's not true.
I mean,
Maybe yeah,
I think they're pretty comparable.
yeah, they're probably pretty comparable. I'm probably just being too aggressive. I'm probably giving the 359 a little more stock relative to the 800.
I
And
mean,
that's
it's a nice
probably
round. It goes like your sub 4, which is just like such a like benchmark for women's 1500 meter runners. There isn't really that like. I mean, 150 going under 2, obviously in the 8 is great, but it's a lot more common than going under 4. I think at this point.
yeah. Well, oh yeah, well, for sure, yes. But
But
wait, hold on.
go ahead.
Wait, what's more common? Are you saying?
I'm saying that going sub 2 is more common.
Well, yeah. I mean, going sub 2 is more common, but that's because sub 2 and sub 4 are not equivalent.
Right, exactly. That's what I'm saying. It's more of a round numbers game, which I think it makes like sub 4 sound really good, whereas like sub 158 just doesn't have the same kind of
Yeah.
appeal to it.
All right. It's probably pretty equivalent, but I still think it's the 15. Do you think it's the 15?
I think so by a hair, though. I could be. I think if you had said 800-meter, I think you could have maybe convinced me. I'm kind of right in the middle. Um, but yeah, outstanding season for her so far. She'll be one to track extremely closely over the next few months. Let's talk about someone else who I think has really changed the way we see her as a runner over the last few months, and that is Sophie O'Sullivan, who has just put together some spectacular performances. She's run 844 in the 3K. She's run 237 in a 1,000 meters, 402 in the 1,500 meter, and 201 in the 800. Just blistering result after blistering result. And she put together a great, I think, what was it, U23 European Championships results. She just has been on fire, and seemingly there hasn't been anyone who can really stop her.
She's been really good. I mean, just I think she found momentum, like on the U23 European stage and on the Irish Championships. And I think at that point they're just kind of like, let's just keep going and see how great this is. Now, granted, 844 is as outstanding as that is. I think comparatively, it's on an outdoor track, right? So it's
Right.
something to consider there. We're used to seeing those kind of times on the indoor oval, but I was wrong. I was wrong. I'll put my hand up and I'll say I didn't really believe that she had this kind of potential. I just didn't. Yes, I know her mother was like a superstar Olympian, and I get it. I mean, but I was wrong. This is incredible. I still think the leap is unprecedented. I mean, she even ran 408 earlier this year, and that came out of nowhere.
Yep.
I mean, I'm trying to figure out like some of her times. I mean, just in 2023 alone, I think the slowest time, which is okay, maybe not that. I was going to say it's 443, which is not accurate. Yeah, before like Peyton Jordan, she was running 417, and now she's down to 402. That's
Yeah,
insane.
I mean, like you said, that 408 felt like she had taken the big step forward that we hoped she could. To go from that to 402 and I mean be competitive in big meets, I just think she's going to end up being one of the women to watch over the at least during the track seasons. And I'm really fascinated to see what we see from her from a cross country perspective. She's obviously very fit. They don't need to run her for another month or so on the grass. And I mean, again, we're talking about a 6K. This isn't 10K that we're talking about, like on the men's side. If you're running 844 on the 3K, like it's really not that big of a jump to the 6K. And I just think she's going to be squarely in the All American picture. And if she keeps over or exceeding our expectations, maybe she's even higher than that somehow.
If you had a if your life depended on it, and we said right now, is she going to be an All American in November? You would say what?
I'd say yes.
Yeah, I think that's the safer bet. If my life depends on it, I think Sophie O'Sullivan becomes an All American and saves our butts. Okay, more specifically, the track though, is she the national title favorite over 15?
Probably.
Right? I think so.
I mean, Maya Ramsden, I think, is going to be pretty hard to beat. I think there's other women like Appleton who come to mind as well. Who am I missing? Amina
Thornton Bot.
Matug, Thornton Bott. Yeah, I mean, all the Oregon women. Um, but no one has this kind of top end PR, and she backed that up with good range on either side of that, like, which is incredible. So I think you probably go in and she has proven that she can be pretty tactically strong and she holds position well. Like I think she probably has to be in a field where there isn't really any overwhelming favorite.
And that's the thing. I'm looking at this, I go, I don't know who's better than her right now. and again, like we're in September, right? Like
Yeah.
we're talking about a race that's going to happen in June, but even if it was indoor track, right? Okay, well, what does this mean for the indoor oval? And is that translatable? And can she build more momentum in cross? And like, how does that transfer over? So I don't know. I just know that I'm probably done doubting her, at least for now. So I apologize to Sophie O'Sullivan for not initially believing in her, but now I very much do. So, um, do you have anything further on that?
No, I'm with you. I was never the biggest Sophie O'Sullivan fan, and I think I will become one over the next few months because I think she's going to make us look dumb in a lot of different ways.
She kind of already has,
Yeah,
but
that's
that's
true.
okay. Yeah, it's okay. All right. Are we gonna do uh hot takes? Our hottest takes going into our boldest predictions going into the 2023 cross country season.
Yes, let's go ahead and do those. So we'll do, like I said at this top, we will do one men's prediction each of us and one women's prediction. The way I framed this to Garrett before we started this was these are bold predictions on based off of like our rankings that we've kind of completed. We already are so in the mix with a lot of these things, so it's hard for us to make a prediction that feels bold compared to what we've already kind of set ourselves to
Right.
believe. So, with that said, we still want to have hot takes that we feel good about and feel like we actually do believe in. So, the way I framed it to him was if this was like a plus 500 bet, would you feel comfortable taking that? You have 5-1 odds. How would you feel about saying that? And so we came up with predictions. And the way we're going to do this is Garrett will say his hot take. I will grade that on a scale of 1 to 10 on how hot it is. And he will do the same for me. At the end of the year, we'll tally these up, see if we got any of them right. Highest point total based off of that hotness factor will win.
Do you want to kick us off?
Sure. I will go with the men side, and I am going to say this is certainly the spicier of the two.
Okay.
BYU men will win the national title with, and I'll throw in a little bonus spice here,
Okay.
with
Okay.
only one runner within the top 20.
Within the top 20?
Within the top 20.
Oh, that's like, I mean, that's got to be, well, because I guess they have to be crowding the 20 to 30 range. So let's take a look at this. I
So
think
let's say Klinger finishes like third, and you have them finish 21 through 26 or something, and so you're talking about ultimately about 100 points
I'll
if you
say
do it
that's
like
an
that.
I'll say that's an eight.
I think that's
I
fair.
I think that's an eight because the scenario there is possible, but I don't know if that scenario has ever happened.
No,
And now, granted, I don't know when the last time we ever had a national title come down to a tie, so
right.
anything can happen. But that the number structurally would have to be pretty interesting. I think you would have to have Northern Arizona, the questions that we have about the back end or one of their top stars, God forbid something happens to them. I think there's a little bit of unknown there. And I think Oklahoma State, there's some questions about how good LeBron Kip Kemboy is it, and their other guy, Guad, or you know who I'm talking about. I'm
Yes, I
trying
do.
to think
I'm also blanking on the name, so I'm not really helping you out there.
is it, but yeah, and I think with questions about Ryan Shoppy as well, I think it's doable, and I think that's actually where their current lineup is probably pretty close to being structured. But the actuality and execution of that seems really aggressive.
So the reason I came up with this is one, I'm not quite as confident, I think, as consensus in Northern Arizona. I still think they are the head over heels favorite. But as I kind of outlined, I think in our last podcast, I think there's a little vulnerabilities obviously in the back and also just with injury history up front. And I think the other part of all of this is I think the top 20 and more, and even like the top 30 is just going to be really stacked this year individually, to a point where you could have like a pretty good race as like an Aaron Los Harris and be the number 3 for Northern Arizona at like 31st, and like all of a sudden the door is open, even if they have if even if Northern Arizona has a strong edge through 2. I just think BYU's depth could ultimately be a huge deal if they can put together a nice pack in that top 25, top 30 range. Then the scores for all the teams are going to be looking a little higher than maybe what we expect.
Yeah, the probability of BYU winning is like, okay,
Yeah,
that's sure. If you just believe in that team, sure.
right.
But the way they're doing it is, I'm like, okay, yeah, I don't see that happening, but fair enough.
All right,
Um,
we're off to a good start. An 8. So let's hear your first one.
my first one, and this is probably the spicier of the two. I believe that Parker Wolf in November will place second overall at the national meet.
Ooh, that is good. I was looking hard on like a prediction of someone from our top 3 or top like 5 individual rankings. Someone outside of that will win the national title. I couldn't quite get there, but I
Mhm.
was looking at guys like Wolf. I really like that. I think that is like I would say that's a
Now,
9
it's a
in
nine.
my
Well, hold
book.
on a sec. So is that a nine on like
Wait, you're
the
saying number 2. Actually, I'm gonna walk that back. I was thinking national title. Let's go 7. I think
okay?
a 7 right there is good, because
I think fair.
I think he absolutely could be top 5. I think second is pushing it. I think if you said win, then we're talking maybe a 10 right
Yeah,
there. But I like that. It seems doable. He seems primed and ready to take a big step forward. He's been like such a solid cross country runner up front, but if he could take a big step forward, that's kind of logically where he would land.
and that's exactly you took it right out all the words from my mouth. Like it's exactly what I kind of have the thought process for. He's a true long distance talent. He clearly got more refined over the past year, built his fitness. I think we forget that he was what the U20 5K indoor record holder now, American. So I think he's there. I think he's approaching that point. He's the sophomore to junior leap for me. I think can be a pretty significant jump. We've seen it before. I mean, heck, and I guess the eligibility is all messed up because of COVID. But I mean, you look at Bosley,
Yep.
Young, and Hicks last year, and they all had junior eligibility. Again, Parker Wolf is a true junior, but tomato tomato. So I think that's kind of where I see it happening. If I think anyone's going to try to like crack that top 5 in a surprise manner, I think it'll be Parker Wolf.
And he's someone that can run aggressively. And like if Young and Bosley do what they did last year, you feel like, I think we both feel like he has the engine to at least hang. If he
Right.
decides to or not, that's a question. I think he has the capability of at least putting himself in the mix. I think ultimately his lack of a kick would hurt him in winning, but we're not saying that he's winning. You're saying second. So I think that is an excellent take. I will give that a 7. I think that's the perfect sweet spot of what we were looking for here.
Perfect. Perfect. All right. What is your women's hot take?
Women's, and this is not as spicy, but I think with the way we've talked about the women's teams this year and there being kind of a tier in the top group, I think there's a lot of skepticism among both of us that anybody's going to be able to break into that top 4, top
Oh my
6
gosh. I think
group.
you're going to say the same thing as I am.
I'm saying that the Oregon women are finishing
Oh,
on the podium.
wow. Wow. Not what I thought you were going to say.
Okay, interesting.
The
I'm
Oregon
eager to
women.
hear what you say.
It's so here's the thing with the Oregon women. You are you are banking on Victoria Patterson being
Yes,
eligible like we think she is, right?
yes,
That's
that's
we've been told.
that absolutely has to happen.
Right, that has to happen, right? That's we've been told that there's optimism that she will be eligible this fall. We don't know that for sure, but we think that's the case. Mia Barnett likely not going to be eligible. So you get Patterson, you get Thornton Bot. I know I have two guaranteed, not guaranteed, but probable All Americans there.
Americans. Yep.
Harper McLean, sure. Maddie Elmore, sure. I just don't know enough about this team on the grass specifically. I think I know enough about them everywhere else. But on the grass specifically, I think I need more. And if Barnett was in this mix, could it happen? Yes. There's so much talent, and the
Yes.
freshmen are incredible. There's so much talent. But how that translates to the grass, um, you're not the only one, by the way, who is high on the Oregon women this year. But I'm gonna try to balance this 1 to 10 ranking on like a spiciness ranking versus like a realistic
Yeah. Yep.
probability ranking, and I think I'll probably go with like a 7 there as well. I think that's probably about right.
Yeah. I was thinking 6 or 7
I think
there.
six. Yeah, I mean, I'll take it back. It's six. It is
Okay,
six.
there you
Yeah.
go. I so obviously not super likely because of that top 6 that we have in our rankings: the NC State, NAU, Colorado, Florida, Notre Dame, Oklahoma State, that group. But I do think there is obviously a lot of volatility in that group. There's certainly teams, as we've talked about, that could fall out of that if they have injuries or bad days. And then with Oregon, I just really believe in Maddie Elmore. She took a huge step forward this past track season and was super underrated last year. I
Mhm.
think there's
Yep.
certainly a world where she is an All American this year. And then Claudia Kazmierska gave them nothing really on the grass last year, but she was so good indoors and outdoors. I just find it hard to believe that her training with that group of middle distance runners day in, day out throughout this cross country season, that she's not going to be able to provide a lot more. And if she can be kind of the Maddie Elmore of last year, then I think you're talking about a pretty good top 4 that has the potential of being great.
I think the avenues are there, right? Like you can convince me and walk me through and say, well, if this happens with this individual, if
Right.
this happens with this individual, but the probability of all of that happening,
Yes.
it is just like fairly unlikely, and you're projecting a lot. And I think you're also banking on one of those top 4 teams having really tough days. And frankly, the only team that doesn't have great depth is Florida. And so your margin for a podium spot is, I think, just as thin as it was last year.
I think you're talking about Florida and Colorado as potentials of dropping out depending on
I don't know if
situations.
I see Florida, if Colorado in the same tier as Florida, because I think Colorado has more depth and
No,
options.
I agree. I just think in terms of volatility, they're bad case scenarios drop them, I think, past Oregon. Not even necessary worst case scenarios. Whereas I think Florida, it's more of a coin flip if that fifth runner doesn't at least do something. Um, but yeah, I mean, it's a hot take for a reason. It's going to be a challenge. They're going to have to take steps forward, and they're going to need to get help. Similar to the BYU men prediction, where they need to be as good as they possibly can be at that backpack, but they also need NAU to kind of slip up as well.
All right, my woman's hot take, which is basically what I thought you were going to say, is I think Stanford's going to be on the podium. I think
Oh
this is
wow! I was looking at them too. We're basically, yeah. This is a
it's
exact
this,
replica.
it's the exact same thing. Amy Bunnage is great. Irene Riggs
Yep.
is great. I think Zovia Dudek's great if she's healthy enough. I know she's great if she's healthy enough and she's firing on all cylinders. Lucy Jenks can be a top 50 runner we've seen before. A little up and down depending on the season, but she's great. Young, super talented team. Women are continuing to evolve and get better. Abby Archer and Audrey Suarez and uh, Didamio. I'm trying my best here. Sorry, but there's a handful of women there that I can go down the line and be like, she could get better, she could get better, and they're already really good. So I think you add Riggs in there, you add Bunnage in there. Even if Dudek were to somehow not race this fall, I think they're still better than they were last year, which is reflected in our rankings. But if Dudek is back at 100% in clicks, yeah, I think a podium spot is realistic for Stanford.
Yeah, I mean, I think they're really the only team out of the top 6 in our rankings where you're like best case scenario, you could be second or something. Like
Yeah.
I think with they have a lot more volatility to them just because they're going to be relying on some young runners, some runners who haven't been particularly in form like Dudek as of late, but they have shown that they have the top end talent. And if they can all put it together, or at least like 75% of them could put it together, then they absolutely have a shot at the podium. Again, they're going to rely a little bit on some help from maybe those top 4 or 5 teams to not have their best days. But this is a team loaded with potential that could, if they realize it this year, could do something very special.
So what's your spice rank on that?
I think that's a 6 as well.
Okay.
I think that's about the same. I think Oregon is maybe the safer team to be like 5th or 6th, maybe. But I think Stanford has maybe a little bit more potential to really crack into that podium.
All right, so let's recap here. We have BYU men winning the national title with only one runner in the top 20. We had that as a spice level of about 8, right?
Yes.
Parker Wolf finishing second individually at the national meet. We had that about a 7.
7.
Is that correct? Oregon being on the podium, Stanford being on the podium, each 6. So pretty on par. I think we're both in the same range here. Those are our hot takes. So come back to this episode and see if we're right. I know someone's going to take these like this episodes out of context and be like, they think they're winning the national title. It's like, no, it's not what we said. I just know we'll get aggregated. So,
oh yeah, we're just fuel for aggregation, right? But yeah, I hopefully we can tag this and bring this back at the national meet, and hopefully at least one of us get one of our guesses correctly, because that would be a great way to start out this segment. I think this should become a recurring segment before almost every season. I think we should do this before indoor, outdoor, cross country. I think this will be great. Another way for us to battle and see who's really has the best knowledge.
Yeah, we could also both be wrong. It just never happens, right? Like we just get
we won't talk about it if we both get 0. That's the beauty. We just will conveniently forget about this.
The best part is that I control the RSS feed, so I'm just like delete episode, and it's like no, it was right there. It's like no, it wasn't. We never did that episode at all. So if anyone, if anyone's looking at this episode, save it now, download it now.
That's a great way to fueling our downloads for this episode.
Yeah, that's true. Okay, I think that's it. I think that's really all we have for today. I don't know what we're going to do next week, but we'll figure something out, and it'll be just as fun and just as entertaining. D2, D3 rankings on the site. We do have another project that Ben is working on that is in the works. It's in production, I guess you could say. Again, I still have a few things going on. In case anyone hasn't really picked up from some of our social media work or things that we're doing there, we're sending out freelancers this year. We're sending out people to go to on-site. We have someone going to Joe Piani. We have likely someone going to another major regular season meet. And then we'll hopefully be having some postseason coverage as well. So we're trying. And if you are someone who is nearby one of those major regular season or even postseason meets, and you're able to potentially get some post-race interviews, feel free to shoot us a message. Potentially can do work together if this aligns with our budget and our goals. But feel free to let us know at contact@thestridereport.com. And I think that's all I have for my end of episode announcements.
We're growing. Keep an eye on the site. There's a lot of fun stuff that'll be happening, as Garrett mentioned. So make sure you subscribe. Make sure you follow us and subscribe on YouTube, on Spotify, on Apple, wherever you get your podcasts. A lot of things going on. But until next week, Garrett, when we have plenty more to talk about, I'll talk to you.
I'll talk to you.